Welcome to the Asian Connection Mortgage Podcast, where we connect Asian Canadians together to talk about anything related to real estate, mortgages, and finances, based out of Vancouver. Our host is John Lee, mortgage broker with the Rise Mortgage. Grab a bubble tea and enjoy the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Asian Connection Mortgage Podcast. I'm John Lee, mortgage broker based in Vancouver. And today we are going to talk about the TFSA secrets wealthy Canadians never talk about. And I want to be clear from the start. So this is not a beginner's episode. This isn't like, what's a TFSA or how to open one at a bank. No, you can Google that and they'll give you all the answers. This is more like, for people who actually understand money, how to use their TFSA very differently from everyone else. Because most Canadians technically have a TFSA, but almost nobody is really using it properly. And the crazy part is these aren't loopholes or tricks. This is all written directly in the Canadian tax law, and it's just never explained in a simple, practical way. So if you've ever felt like this before, where I'm just like, I'm saving, I'm investing, I'm doing the right things, but I still don't feel like I'm getting ahead fast enough, well, this episode is for you. So let's start off with, TFSA is not a savings account. And this is really tricky because TFSA stands for tax free savings account. So there's that word savings. So when the people hear about that, they just think of savings account where they just put in and collect interest. How to think of it is more like a tax free container or like a tax-free investment account where whatever you put inside this container comes out tax-free forever. So there's no income tax, no capital gains tax. You don't need to report anything to CRA. So the real question is not, no, do you have a TFSA? The real question is, what are you putting inside it and what role does it play in your life long term? Because wealthy people don't see their TFSA as a side account. They see it as one of their core wealth building tools. And that's the difference in the mindset. And it's worth lots of money. Like I'm hoping that this podcast is going to be so mind blowing that these are tips that people would actually pay, and you guys are getting it in this podcast all for free. So let's start off with number one. The TFSA is a growth vault, not a savings account. This is the first big difference between how most people use a TFSA and how wealthy people use it. So most people use their TFSA for safety. So they will put it in cash, GICs, uh, high interest savings account. Whereas wealthy people, they use their TFSA for growth. And here's why. Because you basically have three main types of investment accounts in Canada that you can use. There's the taxable accounts, so we call them non-registered, RSP, and TFSA. Yes, there's like RESP, but no, just for yourself as adults, these are the main accounts. And only one of those gives you both tax-free growth and tax-free withdrawals, and that's the TFSA. So logically, the assets with the highest long-term upside should be in one account where CRA can never touch the growth. So things you can put in that are considered high growth would be like global equity ETFs or US stocks, long-term growth funds. What shouldn't be in there would be your emergency cash, uh, not money you need for next year, or something where your investments are growing 2 or 3%. So let's do some simple math. So let's say you are investing 6,000 a year for the next 20 years. That's $120 altogether in total. If that grows at around, say, 8% a year, you end up with roughly 275,000. Now, here's the important point. If that money is in a taxable account, then if you sell it and you gain, then you pay capital gains tax. Within an RSP, you don't need to pay taxes on the growth. However, when you withdraw it, then you pay income tax on it. Lastly, TFSA, you make 275,000, you keep the entire 275,000. And that's the difference alone is easily like tens of thousands of dollars. Sometimes over $100,000 over a lifetime because of compounding interest, exponential growth, and so on. So when wealthy people look at TFSA, they're asking one simple question. What investment do I want to protect from tax the most? And that's what goes inside. So the best way I can summarize this is your TFSA is not for being conservative. Your TFSA is for letting time and compounding do its thing. Using your TFSA like a savings account is like it's it's like driving a sports car and only driving in a school zone. You are not really maximizing the benefit. So number two, your TFSA can become a generational wealth tool. This is one almost nobody knows. Your TFSA can actually outlive you. In Canada, if you name your spouse as a successor holder on your TFSA, the account doesn't end when you die. If you simply transfer to them, there's no tax, no prebate, no probate, no reset of contribution room, and it just keeps growing tax free. So, for example, imagine this. You pass away with 400,000 or 500,000 in your TFSA. Your spouse now has their own TFSA plus your TFSA, and they're both still fully tax free. So, as a couple, you've basically created a permanent tax free wealth engine. And if someone starts early, invests consistently, and lets it compound for 40 or 50 years, it's not crazy at all to end up with seven figures inside a TFSA. And like I said, this is all completely invisible to CRA. If you look at your T1 general statement where you have to fill it out when you file your taxes, there's no spot about disclosing your TFSA. So this is all hidden. And this is literally one of the cleanest ways in Canada to pass wealth to the next generation. And because it's all tax free, this really matters for a lot of Canadians, especially immigrant families as well, where they're trying to build a new life in Canada and they want to pass on a legacy to the next generation. So, because for many of our parents, the goal wasn't really luxury. It's more like stability, security, and not being a burden on their kids later. So, the TFSA, if it's used properly, is one of the simplest tools to make that happen. Number three, this is the last one. The TFSA is your tax free retirement paycheck. This should apply to everyone. Uh, if you're an employee, professional, people with pension, people with RSP, uh, this tip is all for you. Here's the key idea most people never realize. TFSA withdrawals do not count as income. So we mentioned that before because people think about RSP because when you contribute, you get tax deduction. So when you pull it out, it's taxable. TFSA, when you take it out, it doesn't count as income, which means in retirement, they don't increase your tax bracket. They don't affect your OAS, so old age um, security. They don't reduce government benefits. They don't show up on your tax return. They're completely invisible to CRA. So now compare this to RSP. It's great, but every dollar, like I said, you take out as taxable income. So the wealthy retirement strategy account, it's making sure that when you are retired, you have different buckets to withdraw your money from. So through planning, you'll likely withdraw some money from your RSP, some from your pension, and then to top off your lifestyle, you withdraw money from your TFSA. So instead of pushing yourself into a high tax bracket, you simply smooth out your income. So for example, say you need $80,000 a year to live when you retire. You could take 40,000 from RSP and 40,000 from your TFSA. So to CRA, it looks like you only made $40,000, but your actual lifestyle is actually $80,000. That's a difference of like over 20 or 30 years of retirement, and which is really massive. So this is how people retire comfortably without ever feeling like half their money is going straight to taxes and going to government and so on. Your TFSA is the only account in Canada that lets you control your tax bracket for the rest of your life. So just to conclude everything, if there's one thing I hope you take from this episode, it's this: a TFSA is not a side account. It's not something you get to later. It's not just where the most powerful financial structures ever created for regular Canadians. The difference between someone who feels stressed about money in their 60s and someone who feels financially free is really it's really income. It's understanding how the system works and using the right structures early. Your TFSA is not about this year. It's about the next 30 or 40 years of your life. And the earlier you start treating it seriously, the less you'll ever have to worry about money later. Not because you got lucky, not because you picked the perfect stock and so on, but because you finally started playing the same game that wealthy Canadians have been quietly playing the whole time. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider giving us a review and subscribing to our podcast on your favorite platform. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Asian Connection Mortgage Podcast.